Hello everyone. Thank you for joining this session, which we have themed Discover Your Inner Matrix. I've named it Human Matrix because it kind of felt as this year it was very important to kind of stop, introspect, and see where we are headed from now on. It is a great opportunity to go through thousands of books in this international book fair, and therefore we take this chance. I personally would like to share two specific books which have really impacted my personal life and in fact thousands and millions of people around the world. These two books are from different times, different time periods, but these are one of those books which time and again have a very significant effect on our life. And I'm hoping that through the discovery of these books or through reading these books, you might discover this human matrix within you too. So please join me. So the first book that I would like to share requires no introduction because it's written by Mahatma Gandhi, The Story of My Experiments with the Truth, a person who is world-renowned, whose life itself is a message for the entire mankind, who even today has such a significance on many countries around the world. My Experiments with the Truth is just not a book. It is a living mechanism which Gandhi used entire his life. And it really connects to his personality in the sense how he experimented every phase, every action, every thought of his at a human level and enacted that in his life and actually led the entire country to get free and be freed from the colonialism of 350 years, which India was under British rule. His vision was, of course, concentrated on making India free, and he led his non-violent movement. But his actual vision was that mankind himself, a person, should be free from within, that he is not enslaved with anything from within, the person, the freedom of the spirit. And that was his actual message, which of course nowadays gets overlooked with the modern generation where we have taken to complete different paths and taken to different extremism. But the actual message of him, where he very clearly stated that the freedom of the entire mankind was his vision. So let us read a small excerpt from his book, his autobiography, in his words. This is a chapter, The Training of the Spirit, from his book, My Story of Experiments with the Truth. The spiritual training of the boys was much more difficult matter than their physical and mental training. I relied little on the religious book for the training of the spirit. Of course, I believe that every student should be acquainted with the elements of his own religion and have a general knowledge of his own scriptures, and therefore I provided for such knowledge as best as I could. But that, to my mind, was a part of the intellectual training. Long before I overtook the education of the youngsters of the Tolstoy farm, I had realized that the training of the spirit was a thing by itself. To develop the spirit is to build character and to enable one to work towards a knowledge of God and self-realization. And I held that this was an essential part of the training of the young, and that all the training without the culture of the spirit was of no use and might be even harmful. I am familiar with the superstition that self-realization is possible only in the fourth stage of life, that is sannyasa, renunciation. But it is a matter of common knowledge that those who differ preparation for this invaluable experience until the last stage of life attain not self-realization, but old age amounting to a second and pitiable childhood, living as a burden on this earth. I have a full recollection that I have held these views even while I was teaching in 1911 and 12, though I might not then have expressed them in identical language. How then was the spiritual training to be given? I made the children memorize and recite hymns and read to them from the books on moral training. But that was far from satisfying me. As I come into closer contact with them, I saw that it was not through books that one could impart training of the spirit, just as the physical training was to be imparted through physical exercise. Even so, the training of the spirit was possible only through the exercise of the spirit. And the exercise of the spirit entirely depended on the life and character of the teacher. The teacher has always to be mindful of his P's and Q's, whether he was in the midst of his boys or not. It is possible for a teacher situated miles away to affect the spirit of the pupils by his way of living. It would be idle of me, if I were a liar, to teach boys to tell the truth. A cowardly teacher would never succeed in making his boys valiant, and a stranger to self-reliant could never teach his people the values of self-reliant. I saw, how, therefore, that I must be an eternal object lesson to the boys and girls living with me. They thus became my teachers, and I learned I must be good and live straight, if only for their sakes. I may say that the increasing discipline and restraint I imposed on myself at Tolstoy form was mostly due to those words of mine. And elsewhere, one time Gandhi also shares, life is an inspiration. It's a mission to strive after perfection, which is self-realization. So as one goes and reads through each and every chapter and slowly evolves through his book and the autobiography of Gandhi, one realizes and can connect to his movement and his personality and evolution as a human himself. He's one of those rare persons who just did not fight or desire for freedom and independent struggle just for the sake of it. He connected himself with his own self to nourish himself, to emancipate his own self, to conquer his own vices as much possible each and every day. And as he conquered, he disciplined that to the people around him. And this transformation within him, through the realization of his own vices and strength, is what that made him the person who millions followed, and that resulted in giving, of course, freedom not only to India, but gave such a repelling effect to the entire world. So today, when we think of this year especially, how can we change what's happening with us, with our present society? Gandhi set a base through his life, a normal human being who grew in a very staunch and a religious background, but traveled around and raised himself to that occasion of perfecting himself as a human being. Today, when we are faced with a lockdown situation in more than 200 countries, and we cannot anymore plan too much of future, I think we are going through definitely a phase which we have in our human evolution many times. After every certain period, the evolution comes to a standstill, or at least a shocking, where we are forced or pushed or pulled to stop and introspect. What is our purpose? Why are we here on earth? Why are the things that we thought are normal are not normal anymore? So where do we go from here? Is it possible that the times that right now, which seem to be very challenging, could also be just a transition, a start of end of something other and a beginning of something new? So this takes me to my second book, which I would like to introduce, is The Meta-Modern Era by Shri Mataji Nirmala Devi. Interestingly, Shri Mataji, born in India, Her parents also, especially her father, joined the independence movement with Gandhi. And at the age of 7, Gandhi, suddenly fond of her, took her to her ashram, and she did spend time with Gandhi. Shri Mataji Nirmala Devi was born with very special meditative powers, where she was a silent child indulged in her own meditations and had a very compassionate and big heart for the entire mankind. And even at a young, tender age, she would want to find solution for the happiness and harmony and peace of the world. And as she came in personal touch with Gandhi, she was impressed, and she got to learn and see how a man was changing the entire world and leading a movement which brought independence to a huge country and the biggest democracy of the world. There, of course, her roots strengthened, and years later, she started her own movement with opening of Sahasrara and starting a meditation, discovering a meditation called Sahaj Yoga. Of course, Mahatma Gandhi is a legacy between us. And today, his given message is carried by many people who have taken to Gandhian movement. But again, we human beings somehow, after some time, take to the extremes, like we take in the phase of religion, politics, education, social relationships, emotions. What if there was a way to get to this self-realization where we could really find the answers to bring back the harmony, peace, and balance which we humans always look forward for? We do deep inside as human beings always hunger for harmony around us, to be loved, to be cared, and pass on the same to others. This takes me to the next part of this session, to introduce you to a possible matrix which is within us. What is matrix? Matrix is, in aspect to mathematics, rows and columns of zeros and ones. Matrix, in true sense, is something which is there, a source which can be refined, which can be reformed. And what if there is already something within us human beings, which is inborn, which is prevalent in all of us, and it just is waiting to be discovered? Well, there is an answer, and within us. Shri Mataji Nirmala Devi discovered through the process of yoga for the modern times Sahaj Yoga in 1970. And this method of meditation is practiced by thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world. And this meditation, when adapted as a daily way of life, has impacted and transformed human beings to the core of what we human beings truly are for, which means with the energy that is innate within us, which once activated, automatically manifests and evolves these qualities which are within us, which brings us back to our identification of who we really are, which makes us realize our true self, which connects us to who we really are, not to be identified by our qualities which we develop through culture, religion, and where we are born, our languages, not to be identified by the place of work, our color, our friends, society, and money, but just that we are all human beings, and that we are part and parcel of the big ocean, and that we are part and parcel of the mankind. And as each of us chooses to transform and manifest these human qualities with pure desire within us, we have still the hope and capacity to bring back the balance within us and the harmony in the world. As Gandhi said, if you want to be the change, if you want to see the change in the world, you start with first yourself. And Sahaj Yoga meditation gives this greatest opportunity for our mankind to bring that change automatically within us, with this beautiful Kundalini power within us. Let us experiment this, the inner matrix. I hope you have felt this inborn energy on your hands, and I hope that you have been able to discover the inner human matrix within us, and you can take this opportunity to experiment the truth within us, just like Gandhi did years ago and set an example. And each of us has this opportunity now to take to this path to discover our inner self. Thank you for joining.